All right, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start.
All right, I will wait until 4 o'clock. See if we have a quorum.
Yeah, it's good. It's one here.
No, we don't. We need one more.
Judge Peterson, who's that old guy sitting next to you?
Yeah, you recognize him? Incognito. Yeah, we thought it looked like you needed a haircut.
She couldn't be here in person, but she was gonna try to, yeah, she called her. So that gives us a quorum. That it does. Okay, then we will go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Dunn County Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. And Sarah, do you want to do the roll? Bet. We've got Chair Chris Corpola, DHS Director. We've got CJCC Vice Chair Andrea Nodoff on the phone. We have County Board Chair Dave Bartlett. We've got Judge Jim Peterson. We've got County Manager Paul Miller. We've got Sheriff Kevin Bigd. We've got Supervisor Jim Tripp. We've got Clerk of Court Katie Shalley. We have Citizen Member Carrie Ackman, and we have Public Health Director KT Gallagher. We also have joining us some guests. We've got Luke Wagner, Judge-elect. We've got Chris Meyer, Judge-elect. We've got retired Judge Stewart, and we have retired investigator Barb Gorman with us today. Is there anybody else that I did not call? Just trying to ensure that we've got everybody that is here. I think so.
Jason Spetz from UW Stout is here.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Right, and we'll try to announce anybody else that sneaks in. Oh, Allison Morris here as well. Excellent. All right. I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 8th.
So move.
I'll second that.
Seconds. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in agreement with approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Do we have any public comment? No. Then we will move on to consideration of action to be taken by the council. 2022 Treatment Alternatives and Diversion Grant Letter of Support. Sarah, do you want to speak to that? Yes, so in the meeting packet, there is a draft letter of support drafted for the next cycle of TAD funding. That's the Treatment Alternatives and Diversion. We're going to be starting a new funding cycle in 2022. So we're really seeking support from this group to continue the treatment opportunity program and the assessment protocol that is funded through the TAD grant. And I do have some stats in here. Since the program started, we've had 74 of 124 participants successfully graduate. And of those that we could do 1 year recidivism rate, 74% have not had any new charges post program. So the program is effective and we hope to continue the program. So we're looking for a motion of support for this letter of support for the TAD grant and that we would include in our application packet. Jim, can I have a second?
I'll be second.
Dave will be a second. All right. Any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor of that motion to submit a letter of support signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Staff report, Sarah. All right. Also included in the packet is a written staff report. I do want to add that in the state budget, the TAD funding, the Treatment Alternatives and Diversion, has increased to 2.5 million starting in fiscal year 2023. But the state legislature declined to make any statutory changes to the TAD statute. The state CJCC was hoping that the legislature would remove the 25% match required by counties
It is difficult for smaller counties or some counties to really fund that 25%. But that is still in the TAD grant. But the good news is the dollar amount is going up, and it was well supported in the state legislature. Other than that, there's no other updates that I have unless there's questions that you'd have on the written report.
Absent any questions, our next item is our education component. So if you will recall, we've talked about in this group trying to make good use of this time when we meet as an opportunity to create sort of a shared brain trust and language knowledge base around some of the issues that we attempt to address through the CJCC. So 2 years ago, probably going on 3 years ago this fall, we had some money through our family treatment court grant to do some education training with the staff for family treatment court initiative. And we brought in Carol Ackley. Carol actually lives in River Falls, but she, I don't know if she still does this, but she was the director of a residential treatment facility in the Twin Cities, and she speaks nationally on issues related to addiction and trauma. And so her presentation was, I believe, 3 hours long.
Yes.
And so we're not going to do 3 hours worth. You will be able to go home before 8 o'clock tonight. But Sarah has picked out some pieces of that because we just thought that she had a really unique approach to framing the discussion around particularly addiction, but addiction and trauma.
So we're going to watch about 20 minutes of the video. It's longer. I will distribute it after as well if you want to watch the full. It's almost 2.5, 3 hour video. It is very, very good. And we've got snacks in the back. So for those of you that are here, you can enjoy some snacks while you're watching the video.
And I would just say that Carol did give us permission to both tape and use her presentation.
That
so
she
we're not doing it.
All right, here we go. All right, here we go.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Morning. It's a privilege to be here. I hope that some of the information that you hear today helps you do the all-important jobs that you do and or helps you understand some of the people in your life that you care about. We're going to look at the brain chemistry of addiction. And for those of you in the addiction field, this may be a review, but for those of you who aren't, hopefully it will help you understand this illness. And then we're going to look at the correlation with the brain chemistry of trauma and how those two link. Because most people who abuse substances have a trauma history. The reverse is not true. Not all trauma survivors abuse substances, but most people who abuse substances have a trauma history. And we found that while we can get people sober, we can get almost anyone sober, staying sober is about understanding the trauma piece for a lot of people. So that's our goal here today. There are more slides in this presentation than we are going to have time to go over today, but I wanted you to have them all. So if you're interested in those, you can put your name down on the plan sheet. How many people in here, other than your work, how many people in here know somebody who has a substance abuse problem? Okay. Most people do. Very few families are untouched by this illness, and yet it remains one of the most misunderstood illnesses that there is. Even though the American Medical Association declared alcoholism, addiction to alcohol, a disease versus a character defect in 1956. It's over half a century ago. To this day, there are people who don't understand it as a disease, don't believe it's a disease. There are people in the medical field, nurses and doctors, who don't understand it as a And ignorance of illness or disability can have severe consequences in people's lives, up to and including death. Not just the illness or the disability with that kind of consequence, the ignorance of it can have those kind of consequences, and has over the course of history, if we look back. 40, 45 years ago in this country, the United States of America, even into the 1970s, if you were deaf and mute, couldn't speak, what did we do with you back then? Anybody know or remember? We institutionalized them. And what kind of institution was it usually? Mental, state hospitals, asylums, not very nice places. We thought because they couldn't communicate like we do, that they were either crazy or mentally deficient in some way. And so we locked them up and we threw them away as people. Because we were ignorant of the fact that if you can't hear, if your ears don't work, it's very difficult to learn how to talk. It has absolutely nothing to do with IQ or intelligence, nothing to do with mental health. Completely unrelated. Now, the way we treated them certainly affected their mental health, but that was not part of the original problem. And not only were we ignorant, we were highly judgmental in our ignorance as well, because those two things often go together. In fact, the opposite is probably true. Some of these people were probably gifted geniuses with a lot to offer society, but we're never going to know because of ignorance. 400 years ago, in this country, if you were epileptic, if you had seizures, and you happened to live in Salem, Massachusetts, anybody remember their American history? What did we do to them? Try to burn them, try to drown them, all sorts of horrible things, because we were ignorant of the fact back then that they were having electrical storms in their brains, so to speak, that caused them to have convulsions. And not only were we ignorant, we were highly judgmental then too, because we decided they were bad, evil people, right? Witches possessed by the devil that needed to die. Ignorance and judgment often go together. When we don't understand something, we tend to get judgmental about it. And that combination of ignorance and judgment is called stigma. And stigma can kill. And there remains a lot of stigma, even today in 2019, about addictive disease and other brain disorders. A lot of people think that if somebody becomes addicted to alcohol or another drug, it's simply because they lack willpower, they lack moral fiber, they lack self-discipline, that somehow this is a conscious choice people make to get this disease. And while using a substance is a conscious choice some people make, and frankly in our society, most people choose to use a mood-altering chemical at some point in their lives. And not using a substance is a conscious choice some people make. Becoming addicted to it is not a choice anybody makes. That's a biochemical process in the brain as a result of the choice to use. Do you get the difference? And so no one in our society is immune from this disease. Some people are much more vulnerable to become addicted if they choose to use, and we'll look at the risk factors, but no one is immune because we all use addictive substances. So I'm going to include nicotine and caffeine and LSD, two highly addictive substances. So if I include those two in the list, do you know anybody over the age of 3 who can say they've never used an addictive substance? Probably not. So everybody runs some risk, but some people are at significant risk to develop addictive disease if they choose to use. Addiction is a disease, a brain chemistry imbalance that impacts the part of the brain that's responsible for your instinctual survival drive mechanism. It impacts pathways deep in the base of the primal brain that are responsible for keeping you alive. That's why it's such a powerful disease. That's why it's ultimately a fatal disease. And why the experience of using mood-altering chemicals can be so powerful, life-changing for some people. If it impacted a different part of your brain, it might affect one area of your life but not another. But because it impacts this core primal survival pathway, it usually impacts just about every area of a person's life as the disease progresses. So what is this part of our brains? Your brain's job, to keep this simple so we can understand it, because this is the most complex thing in the known universe. Not mine in particular, but the human brain. To keep this simple so we can understand it, what is your brain's main job? What's its number one priority? Keep you alive. It's the master computer. Everything else that your brain does, which is a lot, that's not related to survival, is arguably just a perk. Its job is to keep you alive. That's its number one priority. That's what it will always default to when making decisions. What needs to happen or not happen to keep this organism alive. So because this is so critical, part of that process is automatic. You don't have any conscious awareness of what needs to happen to stay alive. Your brain takes complete care of it for you. Is that critical? An example is your heart beating. Your heart has to pump blood 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no vacations, no holidays. But what would happen if the message from your brain to your heart to pump got interrupted for some reason? It's over, right? It's pretty clear cut. Your brain takes complete care of that for you 24/7. It's a pretty amazing machine. Another part of the survival messaging system is semi-automatic. Either you have some conscious control over the behavior that needs to happen to stay alive, or your brain takes over for you. So there's a fail-safe built in. It can work both ways. An example is breathing. You have to continuously oxygenate your blood. Now you can control your breathing rate consciously to a certain extent if you're focused on it and paying attention to it. But what happens when you're sleeping or when you're thinking about something other than breathing most of the time? Then your survival brain seamlessly moves in to keep that life-saving rhythm going. So it's a semi-automatic process working both ways. Now, if you want to get a sense of how powerful these pathways are in our brains, think about this imaginary scenario for a minute. Pretend that you're underwater swimming. Everybody done that? You're swimming underwater, so you're holding your breath, right? And you realize it's time to go back to the surface and get some more air. You're running out of oxygen. You can feel that consciously. And so as you start to swim to the surface to get some more air, you get stuck underwater. What starts to happen? You panic. And why do you panic? What's the message your brain gets in a panic situation, a panic moment? Emergency alert now. We have a life and death situation going on here. Your brain immediately and automatically, and that's the key word here now. This is now an automatic life-saving process, no longer under conscious control. Your survival brain takes over to keep you alive. Your brain immediately and automatically goes into emergency alert mode, fight, flight, or freeze response. The oldest, most primal pathway in our brains, parts of it are hardwired in at birth. And now you get adrenaline, right, coursing through your system. Everybody's felt this. This is where you see a 98-pound woman who can lift up a car with her babies under it. She would not be able to do that if this system weren't activated in her brain, giving her that kind of focus and power. You get intensely focused, tunnel vision, in an emergency alert life and death situation. You forget about everything else that's going on in the world. It doesn't even matter. You forget about everything else that's going on in your life, and you get total pinpoint focus on this current emergency life and death situation that you're in. This is what all of our brains do automatically to keep us alive. So would you agree that at this point in time, the most important thing in the world to you is to hold your breath for a few more seconds till you get unstuck? Would you agree with that? There are other things in your life that are important, very important. Your family, your job, your friends. But at this point, in this moment, this goes to number one on the list, just like that. Would you agree that at this point in time, you're trying to hold your breath for a few more seconds till you get unstuck as hard as you've ever tried anything? You are giving it everything you got here. And would you agree that at this point in time, you want to hold your breath for a few more seconds till you get unstuck, more than you want anything? in this moment, you would consider trading anything you owned, your most precious possession, for an oxygen tank, and it would make sense. Be a good trade. Now, you wouldn't have been willing to do that yesterday, and you won't be willing to do it tomorrow if you live, because outside of this moment, that's not a good trade. It doesn't even make sense to trade your most precious possession for an oxygen tank. But in this situation, it makes total sense. It's the right thing to do. Agreed? And yet, no matter how hard you're trying, no matter how focused you are, no matter how incredibly important this is, your life depends upon it in this scenario. If you don't get unstuck, what's going to happen anyway? No matter how hard you're trying and no matter how much you don't want to do. You're going to die. But how are you going to die? You're going to breathe automatically. You can't not do it. And your lungs are going to fill with water in this case, and you're going to drown. So this very survival message, keep breathing no matter what, that's hardwired in to keep us alive, in this exceptional situation, that very same message is going to have the opposite effect. It's going to kill you, it's going to save you. Same message. Now here's the piece I want you to remember about this. The survival messages in our brains, when this pathway get accessed, turned on, so to speak, in an emergency alert life and death situation, or a perceived emergency alert life and death situation. Sometimes we think we're in danger, but we're not. That's part of what the post-traumatic stress response is about. These messages override all the other messaging systems in the brain in that moment. The rational brain shuts down, and this primal survival brain takes over. And it happens automatically and very fast. The messages supersede intellect. You know you can't breathe underwater. It's not like you don't have that information. You know it for a fact, and you do it anyway. They supersede effort. You're trying. You know what the consequences are going to be in this case. It happens anyway. They supersede desire. You don't want to do this. You don't even have any ambivalence in this case. You don't want to breathe underwater, and it happens anyway. The survival messages in our brain, when this pathway get accessed and are running the brain, override all the other messages in the brain in that moment. Okay? That's how it works for all of us. Tuck that aside for a second. The other parts of the survival messaging system are voluntary. We have to actually do the work to stay alive. It's not automatic. Now your brain steers you to get you to do what it needs you to do to stay alive, because that's its main job, by rewarding you or punishing you with good or bad feelings. That's how our brains kind of steer us through life. But we have to actually learn and do the behaviors. They're not automatic. So there's 4 main things human beings have to do to stay alive that aren't automatic. What are they? Eat, sleep, not right now, but soon. Eat, sleep, drink fluids. No, it's not exercise, thank God. Eat, sleep, drink fluids. You guys don't even know what to do to stay alive. You have to have a different training, huh?
Some kind of covering?
Yeah, shelter, that's probably number 5.
Okay.
Yep. Eat, sleep, drink fluids. Well, I guess I'm going to have to clue you in. Sex. Now, contrary to popular belief, you're not going to die if you don't have sex. It's never happened. But what would happen to our species if nobody procreated? So in fact, this is one of the most powerful of the survival pathways in the human brain, because this one keeps our whole species alive. So individually, we have to eat, drink fluids, and sleep, and as a species, we have to procreate. So how does this work? How does your brain make sure these things happen? Because that's its job. What's the hardwiring of this survival pathway that we're born with? We're born with about 17% of our brain set up, hardwiring. The rest happens as a result of genetics and life experiences. We build our own brains. But we're born with about 17% hardwired in, including the beginnings of this survival pathway. So how does a brand new baby, 1 day old, how does it know it needs to eat, and how does it manage to get food, a 1 day old baby? Cries. And why does it cry? Doesn't know what food is, doesn't know what its stomach is, doesn't know anything on day one. What's it responding to? What's the hard wiring? Pain and discomfort. That's the message your brain uses from the very beginning to get your attention or somebody's attention that something needs to be done to stay alive here. The baby cries, the mother hears the cries, hopefully she feeds the baby, and then what happens? After it poops and burps and all that stuff. Goes to sleep. Why? Life is that tough on day one. You eat, you poop, you sleep. But why does the baby stop crying? It's content, the pain's gone away, the need's been met. And this is your survival pathway in its simplest form on day one, and then we build and complicate on this. But pain or discomfort is the message you get that something needs to be done to stay alive. There's a powerful drive to resolve it, make the pain go away, that you learn through the experience of your life what to do. And then there's a pleasurable contentment reward sensation. And this baby is going to start to fine-tune these connections now, build its own brain according to the experience of its life, so that within 48 hours of birth, the baby can start to differentiate between its caregiver's touch, smell, sound of her voice, look of her face over everybody else's. It's called bonding for survival. It's a pretty amazing process. Now, it's not a whole lot different for us than it is for the baby, except we've learned what to do. We know how to interpret the signals, we know what they mean, and we've been practicing this survival behavior every day, multiple times a day, for however many years we've been here, so that now it's automatic. It's habit, now it's hardwired in. Sometimes we don't even think about it anymore, we just do it. What's it feel like for you when you're really hungry, starving? Where do you feel it? You're really hungry. Stomach growls and cramps, where else do you feel it? In your head. Some people get lightheaded, their blood sugar drops, they feel like they're going to pass out. What's your mood like when you're really hungry? Crabby. Your ability to think clearly, concentrate, focus on one thing only. Your ability to use good rational judgment, make good decisions that you're capable of. You ever been to the grocery store when you're really hungry? Are your decisions based on your carefully prearranged grocery list? No, you forgot that at home. Are they based on your checkbook balance, how much money you have till the next time you go shopping? No. The food pyramid, FDA nutritional requirements for the human race? No. If you're in the grocery store and you're really hungry, what are the most important factors in your decision? What looks good needs to be appealing, but the number one criteria, I gotta have it right now, right? Might even tell the cashier the wrapper, so here I would need to make it. So even though you're capable of good decisions around food, there are times when that's not the part of your brain that's making the decision. It's coming from the place of need, discomfort, and survival. And ultimately, you have to stop what you're doing and go take care of the survival need. It temporarily prioritizes your brain. And then what does it feel like after a satisfying meal? Some people like the baby, they want to have a little snooze. Some people get energized, but the pain goes away, your mood improves, you can think and focus again, and life moves forward. And we go through this process day in and day out, over and over and over again, until the pathways get honed, get set into the wiring of our brains. Brain cells that fire together, communicate with each other, wire together. The more you do something, the more you think something, the more you feel something, anything, positive or negative. The more it happens, the more automatic, the stronger the connections are. Repetition is what wires the human brain. Same process is true for sleep. I know you can relate to this. What's it feel like when you're exhausted, bone weary? Where do you feel it? Your head, your feet, your back, pretty much everywhere. What's your mood like when you're really tired? Crabby. Your ability to think clearly, concentrate, focus, impaired. And what thought keeps entering your brain no matter what else you're doing, even driving? Just a few seconds. And what becomes the most wonderful place on earth? Your comfy bed and your fluffy pillow. I see some of your eyes glazing over here now. Stay with me. It's not a meditation. And ultimately, the need and discomfort take over the priority focus of your brain. You've got to stop what you're doing and go take care of this. And then what in the world does it feel like after a good night's sleep? Anybody remember? No? Come on, you've read about it. Positive attitude, recharge, refresh, re-energize, ready to take on the challenges of the day. Pain if you don't do it. A powerful drive to resolve it that temporarily prioritizes your brain. Pleasurable reward. These are our survival pathways. It's how they start and how we build and strengthen them through repetition. Same process is true for thirst. Same process is true for sex. These are the same pathways now in the brain that we've built that mood-altering chemicals use. And in addictive disease, the chemicals ultimately hijack those pain-pleasure pathways, the survival pathways. They change the priorities of the brain. What do you think it feels like for an addict or an alcoholic when they really want to get high and they can't? This is going to sound familiar. What's their mood like? Happy. Their ability to think clearly, concentrate, focus, impaired. Their ability to use good rational judgment, make good decisions that they're capable of, impaired. Headaches, stomach aches, and what do they become totally preoccupied with? What thought keeps entering their brain, no matter what else they're doing? The chemical. And then what does it feel like when they finally get it in their system? Relief, satisfaction, pleasure, sometimes just absence of pain. They don't really get pleasure anymore, but the pain goes away for a while, which is good enough for survival. It's not a great way to live, but it's good enough for survival. And this is what happens with opiate addiction. They don't really get pleasure anymore, but the pain goes away for a while, which is good enough for survival. The brain of an addict or an alcoholic gets cross-wired molecularly, chemically, into believing that it needs that chemical to live, that it's a survival need, like food and water and sleep, because that's the pathway it's using. And if your brain believes, right or wrong, if your brain believes that you need alcohol to live, pot to live, cocaine, speed, pills, heroin to live, it's going to make sure that you get it, because that's your brain's job. But in this case, it's just like air underwater. Even if it's going to kill you, even if you know it's killing you. Because that's the pathway and the power underneath the pathway that gets hijacked by the chemicals. This is addictive disease, a disorder of the survival pathway. And the survival pathways are the same pathways that are impacted by traumatic experience. That's why we see these so often together. So here's how this works.
Okay, so Sarah will send out the link to the entire training. Actually, the next segment of what she goes into in terms of actual brain processes is super interesting in terms of how your brain is actually changed by your chemical usage and how long it takes for your brain to heal after that, and what are some of the factors that are important to consider in that healing. One of the most important being nutrition. And refeeding your brain to help it to heal. But we'll send out the link and you can watch it. All right. So our last item on our agenda is our Lighthouse Award to recognize the contributions of Judge Smeltzer. All right. Sure. And we have the board actually with us as well.
Make him go buy his own.
It'll be virtual.
It's a virtual award.
No, that would be consistent with our last year, right?
Get it to your website.
Got a virtual one. See it.
Wow.
Just seeing if you're paying attention. Still there. Can't make it bigger, but it's good.
All right, so this is an honor of a day to recognize the contributions of Judge Smeltzer and the Lighthouse Award, whereas the Lighthouse represents the archetypal public good. I had to look up what that word even meant. Public good by providing a service free of charge to sea-weary sailors. And whereas a lighthouse represents a system of lamps and lenses to serve as a navigational aid through the power of refraction to change the direction of a ray of light. And whereas a lighthouse represents vision, commitment, and steadfastness. Whereas Rod Smeltzer served as a guiding light, providing a strong beacon of leadership and commitment to collaboration that has been instrumental in the creation, development, and advancing justice in Dunn County with the Dunn County Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. We present this award to you today. This will be your exercise in retirement. Congratulations, Judge.
An elite club with some of our other past Lighthouse Award winners, but we wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for you. And I just am immensely grateful for everything that you provided us. And been great.
Okay, which one do we want to do?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, if I,
Please.
just a couple words.
Yes,
Absolutely.
please.
We would be so disappointed if that didn't.
Certainly surprised.
Yeah, surprise.
Well, it's nice to see some of the folks that we started out this journey with today. I see Barb here and Bill, and Steve back there, folks that, Mr. Tripp, you've been with us as well, and Ms. Bartlett, and Chris, all of us. But here's the thing that I look at when we started, and I had a chance to have lunch with Chief Atkins the other day. We were looking back, and Bill and Barb will especially remember how we started and we met. And Chris, remember we met and we met and we met and we met, and we didn't know if we were going any place at all, and what direction we were going. But we were trying to accomplish something in those days, and we weren't totally sure what it was going to look like. But I guess the architects of that vision was not me, but my colleagues here, Barb and Bill and some of the rest, kind of had an idea where you wanted to go. And but how did you get there? It really was a labor. But here's the thing I want to say: as we went through these different years, and I thank the steps that have happened to make Dunn County a special place is because of everything you folks have done. And it wasn't any of us. I've been lucky enough to be along for the ride. Anything I could have contributed or did, that was a small part of it. But it was interesting to watch the different stages that we went through. And the discussion I had with Chief Atkinson, and Sarah, the opportunity you've had to meet with other folks throughout the state, and we've had an opportunity to be recognized for a county that has made things happen. But that's collectively based on each of your different efforts. And over the years, I remember, Bill, when we talked about it, we had some crazy ideas back then, and I won't put them out there now, Bill, but what we were going to do and how we were going to advance. But there was a lot of decisions that took place in that process, and thank God they did, because we've really gotten to a special place. Steve, when you agreed to be chair of the CJCC, I think that was huge. Okay, and Chair Bartlett, same thing. You're here. You've been coming to these meetings for years. Chair Tripp, you know, the same thing. You got to have your county invested, and you got to have different people assuming those leadership roles. Bill and I learned early on that if it was just us as judges participating, we looked over our shoulder. That was a pretty small crowd that was following. Okay, and but here's some things that are really fascinating. What has happened? I remember Judge Peterson when you became judge. You know, and we started getting some real action out of him. You know, we got some work out of him. But he worked on a thing that they started talking about mapping. Why was that important? Big project. Jim worked hard kind of heading that, getting everybody together. And the only thing I was laughing with Chief Atkinson the other day when we were talking about this, the only thing we got to remember to go back to that map. We created it and to see if we can still use it. Is it applicable? Absolutely, because there's a lot of decision points in there that we can make better decisions if we just use the hard work that we did. Okay? And Chris, some of the stuff that you've stepped up and done, it's been fabulous. Things that we wouldn't have done if we wouldn't have been meeting together like this. And Sarah, you've had one of the toughest jobs in the county that you try to say, I kind of laugh at her title, and I've talked with Sarah that we need to change your title. And Mr. Miller, you need to really work with her on this, is that we got to get her into that position because it's kind of like she has this big responsibility, but she has little or no authority other than to go to the rest of us and say, please, will you come and play in the sandbox, okay? And, but that's huge. But here's the thing I want to leave you with in a thought. I'm proud of what you all have done. My part has been very small. But the thing you got to remember is what is that next challenge that you need to undertake and collaborate together to make this to continue to be a viable effort and have energy within Penn County. That's a big responsibility. It does not happen by itself. Okay? And I do appreciate the county board some years ago making criminal justice part of the strategic plan. And sometimes I don't know how many people in the county really wake up and remember that as we carry out our responsibilities. And we should remember that the county board said this is important, that you all better act, behave, in carrying out your roles, that this is a strategic goal of the county board. So you each have a responsibility. And I think you're gonna go and continue to work this a little apparatus design plan that we put together, and great things will continue to happen. But it only happens because of new people we come in. We've got new leadership with Chris and Andrea on the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. Now it's their chance to be part of that lead, to lead the rest of us and to encourage us, incentivize us to be really active to get some things done. And try to remember, it's not about us, it's about what's good for county, what we can afford to do, and can we get good results doing it. You've got to keep those things in mind. But again, I appreciate this, I do. I've been the small part of it, but to me, what this reflects on more about all of us, that we're willing to meet, talk, try to respect each other in the process. I know I haven't always done that perfectly, but I sure have tried to. And so anyway, I feel good that I think we're in a good place that we can go forward, but you can't take your eye off that effort. And that is the effort to continue to work hard day in, week out, and to keep saying that Dunn County folks, the citizens of this county are worth the effort that we can give to, that energy that we can do and accomplish the things that come out of this effort collectively. So thank you very much, and I will not talk any longer.
So modeling after treatment court, giving the graduates the people who are walking with the graduates an opportunity to comment. Is there anyone that has anything that they would like to add? I think specifically to you, Barb, and you, Bill, who made the effort to come today to recognize. And Steve back there. I forgot Steve was back there.
I would like to say something.
Let's get you to a microphone, so.
Yeah, why not?
That, yes, indeed, you hit on it, His Honor, that it is a very important part of the county board's criteria for moving forward. And I'm just gratified that it's continuing to go. And no wonder you got the award. I mean, we've seen your demonstration of cheerleading up and down the aisle in front of the county board. But you know what? Enthusiasm, that ties right into it. And, you know, says it's important. So good to see Bill, one of the original.
OFs.
Oh, yeah. And two new people that have come on. Thank you for all that you do, and it's support you.
But I would like to say, most of you know I don't live here anymore. But anyway, as a reserve judge, I've had the opportunity to travel all over this district and work in almost every courthouse in this district. I think the only one I haven't hit yet is Superior. I'll probably get in there. But one of the things that I really appreciated about those experiences is I get to see what other counties are doing. You should see it yourself if you get the opportunity. And be so proud. Absolutely. The fidelity of the programs that operate here. Unbelievable. Where other counties are, and I won't name any of them, but they go off in their own direction because they know how to do things better, other than the ways that have been tried, researched, and found to be effective. We'll go off this way. No, we can let these things go. It doesn't have to be just like that. We'll be unique. And consequently, they lose their effectiveness. So I want you to be proud, and I want you to all accept the continuing challenge. I agree with everything these two gentlemen said. But this is an evolving thing. Those that have been here since the beginning would really appreciate that doesn't look the same. But there are some commonalities. One is the diversity of the group that shows up. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. That's not the case in most places, I can tell you. It's just not. They want to be in their silos. They want to be in their own silos. They don't want to share and collaborate. That isn't the way they were trained. That isn't their experience. And it's working here, but it's going to have to change over time. And so I ask you all to continue to accept that challenge, but at the same time, be very proud of what you're doing to make Dunn County a better place. I live in a place that could be a lot better if it followed some of the philosophy, programming, whatever you want to call it, the effective justice strategies, whatever, would be a lot better place, a better community for me to live in. But they want to continue to build jails and hire more probation officers, on and on and on. But I really am proud of having had something to do with this, and I'm here to honor Judge Smeltzer. You did a lot more than you thought. And that word steadfast up there, that meant stubborn.
I just have one comment. Is Ms. Notoff with us?
Andres.
I think she's on there someplace. Sheriff Biggs there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you guys, Sheriff Big and DA Notoff, I would love to meet with you. I got a secret mission for you guys to adopt as some goal that you could do later on. It's really cool. We should fix the whole system. I'll share it with you.
When are we doing lunch?
I'm gonna buy one more, huh?
Yeah, I'm here, Judge.
Okay, good.
If I may put in 2 cents, in the time that I've been here, which is, believe it or not, Judge, coming on 5 years, my observation about the effectiveness of Dunn County CJCC is that it required the participation, the active participation of those who were involved. And had any of them not been so committed, it wouldn't work. I was very impressed when I first met you as the principal judge for this circuit, with the level of commitment that you had to CJCC. The time you put into it, the enthusiasm, the ideas, the positive critical thinking that you applied to it. This program would not be as successful as it has been were it not for your dedication, for your interest, and for your commitment. This can't work without the participation of the judiciary, period. And to have you, during the time I've been here, demonstrate the leadership and commitment that you did, in my opinion, was essential to success of the program. So I thank you for that time, for that effort, for that commitment.
Mr. Miller, thank you. And that's a challenge that we have for Judge-elect Wagner and Judge-elect Meyer, that I expect both of you, because I know you well, that you will commit wholeheartedly to this process, whatever that direction goes, and you get a chance to have some input as to what direction it goes. But, and like I said, you got to work together, respect each other, and good things will continue to happen.
Can't add anything.
All
I
right.
think everybody else said it really well. A couple weeks ago, I had lunch with both Rod and Bill, and I was telling them, which is, I think, very accurate and true, that the judges here they're different than in other counties. And I covered a region, so I saw a lot of judges in different counties, pretty much throughout the entire state. And it's hard to explain how it is that they're different, but some of it is their commitment, as you, I think, just really pointed out very well. In those early years, there were thin times, but I think everybody just kept at it, and part of it was because of both of your expertise. So I couldn't add anything else for all their hard work.
All right, well, thank you. And there will be citizen participant spots available in the future.
We're recruiting.
Well, here's my view. I understand that, but I also understand the passing of the torch. That you got to have new folks come in. They're smart. They have the energy to go forward, and actually allowing that energy to percolate and provide the leadership for the group is probably more important than what I could offer now. Sure, can I do things in the community? Yes. And will I? Probably will. But I think you folks are going to be fine. Okay?
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I believe that is the end of our agenda. Our next meeting will be October 14th at 4 o'clock. And we will plan another short educational or training sort of segment. So if you have strong feelings, what would you like that to be? Let Sarah know, and we'll look for something to fill that spot.
I throw this into, because that was one of our original ideas, this whole idea of that's just so critical. That's what helps you keep possible. So don't ever lose that. Don't ever lose that.
Yes, it only took 12 years to get there or whatever.
I know we tried it initially and people went, what the hell is this?
They're probably still
I'm a
wondering that.
professional. I know this stuff. But we brought in people that were doing things in a different way. So everybody could see it. And if you've never seen it, never read about it, never heard about it, you can't add it to your vision and come up with your own stuff. So please keep that up.
All right. Well, absent anything else, we are